Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Thrive55 Plus podcast, where we give practical inspiration so you get healthier. Your host, Cheryl Jones, will help you uncover more of who you already are and explore what you need to heal and flourish one moment at a time. Cheryl is an author, wellness leader, and health coach voted one of the most powerful women in the mindfulness movement by Mindful Magazine. There is no AI-generated content in this podcast. This has been created by subject matter expert Cheryl Jones.
Welcome to the Thrive55 Plus show. I'm your host, Cheryl Jones, and in this episode, I'm talking with Eric Durak about the role of exercise in managing cancer and what we can all do to bolster the immune system for healthy aging. Eric is one of the nation's leading clinical exercise physiologists and health educators. He has over 25 years of experience in health promotion and has presented at 198 national and international conferences. Eric is the author of 24 books related to healthcare, wellness, and fitness. Eric, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate it.
We share a love of teaching people how to exercise properly. I think back to the 80s when we were both personal trainers at the Sports Training Institute in New York City. Love seeing how your career has evolved. What inspired you to take it in this direction?
Well, I'm actually going to start from Sports Training Institute because I did a conference while I was working in New York. And our boss, Fred, brought me into the office a week or two afterwards and said, how would you like to move to California? There's a research center that's interested in having someone do clinical research. And I said, yes, and the rest is history. I worked in diabetes research for almost 4 years. And then in the early 90s, I started one of the nation's first cancer exercise programs. And that program is going almost 30 years later. They've had locally almost 8,000 survivors go through, and exercise in cancer, in my opinion, is probably the new cardiac rehab. There are over 18,000 exercise cancer trainers just in the United States. And I'm working behind the scenes with some people who are working with Medicare to get exercise in cancer its own reimbursement codes. So in the very near future, people who are diagnosed with cancer will not only be able to do standard treatments, they will probably be able to have some level of reimbursement at their health club for their cancer program, which I think would be fantastic.
I totally agree, because it would help people to be a partner in their healing journey and promote the adoption of an essential health behavior, which is physical activity. What have you witnessed, Eric, in terms of how exercise improves cancer recovery and survival?
Well, early on in my work with exercise and cancer patients, this was in the mid-1990s, I came across some articles from University of Southern California, from people in Europe that were looking at the preventive side. And they were looking at large populations, and they said women who engage in regular physical activity can reduce their risk of breast cancer by over 50%. And that was kind of a big deal to me. And it's like, well, why isn't everyone doing this? You know, why aren't people who may be susceptible to colon cancer or something, how come they're not doing regular physical activity? So there are 20,000 studies now on exercise and cancer, and almost all of them are beneficial. There's not a study, no one's done a study in the last 25 years that said, we trained people in exercise and nothing happened. That just doesn't work that way. I know that Dave Neiman did a study on the immune system with breast cancer. And one of the studies he did not show highly significant changes, but almost every other study that's looked at the immune system says if you train on a regular basis, you can have effects on your natural killer cells, your macrophages, your white blood cells, the ability of your immune system to keep you healthier than people who don't exercise. And I think that's one of the biggest things about physical activity is its effects on the immune system, because that's how most people stay healthy and they don't know it. They have to have a strong immune system. And we heard all about this with COVID over the last 4 years, but they closed health clubs. So now the goal in the health club industry is that we want to be able to stay open as an essential business. And everyone knows that now. And I don't think that that's going to happen again, because I think that the industry has really bounced back. I mean, there's a 10% growth in the health club industry just this year, which is astounding.
To your point, all through COVID, there was no talk about empowering people with knowledge about what they could do to bolster their immune systems. When we say immune system, what are we talking about?
Well, a person's immune system, for the most part, is in their gut. So when you eat healthy foods, when you do intermittent fasting, when you stay well hydrated, your body has the ability to nourish specific types of cells, like natural killer cells, which have a specific immune function, macrophages, which have a specific immune function, neutrophils, eosinophils. They all have a very specific function. Like, everybody knows that white blood cells help with colds and things of that nature, and they help with infection. So when your white blood cell count goes up, that means that your body is fighting an infection. Natural killer cells are very specific to taking out specific types of precancerous cells, and they have a very specific way that they do that. And I'm not an immunologist per se, but based on what I've read, is that exercise, because of blood flow is so important to everything: cardiovascular health, brain function, peripheral vascular health, etc. But it's really the blood flow helping the gut circulate the immune cells throughout the body at a much more, I'll say, efficient rate. And so the body has a much better mechanism to help regulate what we call, not oncogenes, but precancerous cells that are forming in the body all of the time. And so keeping the immune system healthy means that you're really self-regulating against a lot of types of things. And these precancerous cells are one of them. That's why exercise is not just important for prevention, but when a person's diagnosed with cancer, they're usually on a chemotherapy or radiation therapy. Now they're doing immune system therapies as well, because the oncology community has actually said to themselves, we need to bolster the immune system. We don't need to suppress it through chemotherapy, because chemo does a number on the body's immune system for a period of time. And so now they're trying to shift over how they do therapies. I'm all in favor of immune system therapies. I think that's one of the best things that can be done, but it can be augmented by a regular exercise program. And one of the things that we found out 30 years ago is that even a basic training program of moderate aerobics, moderate strength training, walking, flexibility, mind, body, they do wonders. It may be the most supportive type of treatment that you can have for a person undergoing treatment or getting off of their cancer treatment and keeping them healthy over time.
The power of exercise, of simply moving the body. It all comes down to reducing inflammation and increasing circulation, right? We've become a sitting and scrolling society that kind of lives from the head up. We're often so disconnected from our bodies. That's actually what motivated me to write my book, Mindful Exercise. I wanted to help people learn how to tune into their bodies so that they could take better care of them and eventually come to see its magnificence. Eric, are certain types of exercise helpful for certain types of cancer?
Well, yes, there are. Let me chop down a few types of cancers. The first one is breast cancer. And recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, someone asked me about yoga and breast cancer. And I thought, well, let me do a Medline search. Let me do some work on the internet and see who's out there doing work in the area of breast cancer recovery and yoga. And Cheryl, I found over 1,000 articles worldwide. Yoga is one of the most utilized forms of exercise for breast cancer recovery worldwide than anything else, which I found amazing. So breast cancer, is one. Prostate cancer there's a whole series of lower body exercises that are for men who have had prostate cancer, people who have had colon cancer. There are certain types of exercises and contraindications that they have as well. So the industry over the last 30 years worldwide has grown astoundingly in terms of how well they handle these. And even in Australia, you are a licensed exercise physiologist and a licensed cancer physiologist.
So, if a person has received a diagnosis and wants to feel at the helm of their experience, what do you recommend?
If I were a person who had been diagnosed with cancer and my doctor recommended exercise, the first thing that I would do with my healthcare team, because there's a lot of people on a cancer healthcare team, is to find out where there is a certified cancer trainer in my community. Then I would go to them, because if I had prostate cancer and I wanted to do a series of exercises, one of the things that as a former athlete, I don't want to lift too much weight, because that may be one of the biggest contraindications is, hey, you've had a procedure or something done. If you exercise too hard too soon, you may have a problem with your urinary tract or something of that nature that is in healing mode, that you really need to have a very specific program that says you start here and then you can finish here in 4 weeks, 6 weeks or something. And those protocols are all done. There's, like I say, there's 30 years worth of research and education materials that have been put out by American College of Sports Medicine, ACE, all these health and fitness organizations. And like I say, countries like Australia, who have an entire education program through their healthcare system, and other countries as well, too. I think the UK has some work in that area as well.
Yeah, I appreciate seeing the transformation of healthcare systems and the move to more holistic treatment. It gives me hope. We know that wellness includes many aspects: physical, mental, spiritual, social, and emotional. It's really about the whole person. And what I've experienced with supporting friends through their cancer experience is that even when some part of the body is sick, it is possible to have a sense of well being, more love of self and others, greater personal insight and clarity, and trust that all will be well. Mindfulness meditation for me is the most powerful way that I know of to cultivate this sense of well being.
Well, the interesting thing about this entire topic of cancer wellness, and I know that your emphasis and your expertise is in the mind-body area. And, as part of my journey into the research of exercise and cancer, of course, I came across Herb Benson and all of the other people who were using mind-body. And I said, well, has to be something that's a part of my program. So at the end of our 40-minute exercise, we go into the aerobics room or the stretching room or whatever, and we put the mats on the floor and we do some partner stretching. We do breathing. We'd have them lay on the floor and just relax for 15 minutes. And I really felt that was an important part of the program. Now, I had a very tertiary knowledge of the benefits of the mind-body aspect. But as I'm getting older, it's becoming way more important to me, way more important, because you can't exercise hard your whole life. You have to back off at some point. You have to move in another direction. And I'm really at that precipice right now. I can't lift hard in the gym anymore. I don't sprint. I don't run anymore. I don't do any of those things. I work out in the gym almost every day, but I have to be very careful about injuries, about fatigue, about overuse, all that kind of stuff.
I couldn't agree more. I think we have to be honest with ourselves and truly listen to the body. Having a mindfulness practice helps me to pay attention to what's happening in my body when I'm doing really any kind of exercise. I'm constantly checking to make sure I'm not overstraining because I don't want to get hurt. It takes a lot longer for injuries to heal as we age. And not being able to exercise often leads to depression, which often leads to unhealthy eating and gaining weight because we can't exercise. And all of this becomes a vicious cycle. And the pharmaceutical industry is really capitalizing on this. What are your thoughts on this, Eric?
Well, I'm going to preface, I'm going to have to run that through my head here because the industry right now is at a huge crossroads, and it's all about Ozempic, which is the weight loss, which is the diabetes drug, Manjaro and Wegovy and all these other, there's 10 of these drugs that are on the market right now. And the industry is just going berserk because they see that finally the 40% of Americans who are obese will now be able to go to health clubs because the doctors are going to have to recommend strength training and exercise because these people lose so much lean body mass. And I say to myself, well, if they weren't in this situation, it's kind of a grave situation that now that they're using this medication, but they're going to find out that the benefits of exercise are not just building muscle or maintaining muscle in the case of these people on Ozempic, but as you age and it's maintaining range of motion. When I was in my 20s and I was doing martial arts, I could almost do the splits. I can't do a third of that now because I stopped. I got into bicycling 20 years ago and I stopped stretching. I was in great shape, but I stopped stretching. Now I have to stretch at the gym every day. So it's the strength training, it's the range of motion, it's the breathing, it's the posture, it's just the relaxation aspect of it. I'm trying to do, I'm not a big yoga guy. I've done it in the past. I'm not a big Pilates person, but I understand the benefits now. And I'll take you back, Cheryl, that when we were at the Sports Training Institute, we had that group of trainers who were movement therapists. I thought it was nuts. I said to myself, why are these people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I look back at that now and I say that was the best decision that management ever made, was to have movement therapists working with people because nobody else did. And they were about 30 years ahead of their time. So I give credit where credit is due.
Yes, I remember the movement therapists were helping people to warm up before their workouts. They were indeed helping people to get into their bodies and prepare both physically and mentally for exercise. Now that you bring this up, Eric, maybe this was a seed that was planted in me to kind of further explore the body-mind connection. Anyway, we know that some people have an aversion to exercise. Just the word can bring up resistance. What would you offer to people who feel this way, especially if they're managing cancer and their energy level is low?
Well, that's interesting because historically, you and I both started our careers as a trainer, and most people, I think, are hesitant to exercise because they think it's going to be hard and it's going to be painful. And they're hesitant to do something because, oh my God, I'm going to sweat, I'm going to breathe hard, my muscles are all going to be sore, etc. Whereas the types of exercise programs we have now have very little of that. So I think that that's been addressed. I think the other thing too is that people are still listening to their doctors, and their doctors are not recommending exercise as part of their treatment. And I don't think that they ever will. But I think where we've been over the last 3 or 4 years has shown us that more people are taking a little bit more care of themselves. They didn't have access to healthcare systems for a while, and they didn't want to be depressed. They were at home. They couldn't visit people. And a lot of folks took refuge in just walking around the block. And that was kind of a big deal. And they said to themselves, hey, I feel pretty good. So if you're doing something, and it's the role of the exercise profession to say to people, we're going to start you on a path that's going to be really good for you, as opposed to, oh, we have to do all this diagnostic testing, and oh, you've got to breathe into this thing, and oh, you've got to lift all this weight. Let's just work on a program that's going to make you a better version of yourself in 6 weeks, 6 months, etc. So I'm going to come back to this whole Ozempic thing. And the doctors are wanting to have people on these GLP-1 drugs for life. And I just don't think that metabolically that's going to be possible. So what I'm doing in my writings and what I'm doing in my speakings right now, because I'm doing a few podcasts on this. And what I'm trying to say to the audience is, we don't need to be on Ozempic for life. We need to be fit for life. Everyone in the industry now has to look at everyone who comes in the door as a member for life. And Cheryl, I know you're not as old as I am, but my father back in Michigan in the 1960s, he bought a lifetime membership to Universal Health Spas. And when he passed away, one of the young trainers or one of the young people from the front desk staff actually came to his memorial service and said something about him. This guy came in and was talking about my father and how he was such, it was a part of his life even through his mid 70s, and that he was the last lifetime member who has still had a card. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we're at a precipice right now in this industry. And I think that if we can give people an option, that if you want to come in for weight loss, you should stay as a member for life.
It sounds like your father really inspired this guy. What a great role model. I totally agree that going to a gym can be motivating. This year, in fact, I joined a fitness center after almost 30 years. During that time, I was on hiking trails and on my yoga mat, but after my daughter's recent move to another state, my body was shot. I was really lucky that I didn't hurt myself, and it was a wake-up call to really focus on getting strong again. And what I find is that going to a gym helps me to stay accountable to myself and also to feel more socially connected.
Yeah, and that's such a big thing because, like I say, over the last few years, people have felt so isolated. And, depression, suicide attempts, all these things we know were on the increase. And I think that, and it's not just health clubs. I don't want to point a finger and say everyone needs to join a health club. I think a lot more people would be better in mind, body, spirit in a health club. But you're right. They don't have to. They can walk around the reservoir. They can walk in the foothills here. They can walk around their neighborhood. Just walking the dog every day has huge health benefits. People should get a dog, maybe. I don't know. And there are some doctors who are absolutely amazing too. The issue with medicine, though, is they just don't have the time. And so they need to be the gatekeepers to get people to the instructors. And there's a whole area of wellness that while I have it in my head, I walked into a wellness center about 5 years ago in Scottsdale, Arizona, called Cerulean Active Wellness. And it was essentially a precision wellness company. They had compression sleeves. They had a device called a Nano V. They had hyperbaric oxygen therapy. They had pulse electromagnetic frequency. They had cryotherapy. I told you recently, I was at the health club conference in LA. The big thing these days, Cheryl, is cold plunge. Probably not my favorite thing to do, but everybody's into the cold plunge. And if it works for you, like you say, enhancing the circulation, enhancing metabolism, I'm all for it.
Very cool. Indeed, there are many paths to achieving holistic health and well-being. And that's really the whole point of this podcast, to help each person to crack their code, so to speak. What words of inspiration can you offer to those managing cancer and other immune system issues?
Well, I like what you said about guidance. At any time, at any stage, at any age, you should be able to find someone to help you through a process. I'm going to tell you a very quick story. You and I both started out our career as personal trainers, so chances are we still know a few things about training. I had a young man who grew up in my neighborhood, so I've known him since he was 12. He's now 31. He's a personal trainer, and I hired him a couple months ago to redo my program. Well, he's young enough to be my son. And I hired him because he knows things that I don't know, because it's a whole new world of personal training. And I thought it was pretty interesting to do that. And so the next phase of your question is just to be open to learning new things. And I think that as we age, the most important thing that you do to sort of stay young at heart is to be able to learn new things. And I'm way into that. I've had to open up a lot of things in my brain, in my heart, all those kind of things that I had never even thought of 10, 20 years ago. The kids are out of the house. They have their lives. I have my own things now that I'm doing. And I think about these things a lot more.
It's so true. We may experience empty nest syndrome, but we also have an opportunity to put some of that energy back into ourselves. And I love what you said about staying open to learning new things. We can learn a lot from younger people, and they can learn a lot from us. It's why we need intergenerational friendships at work and in life, but that's another conversation. Eric, what are you up to these days, and how can people get in touch with you?
Well, people can get in touch with me through my website, medhealthfit.com. And I know that I've got a contact thing in the back. The last couple of years of my life, I've had really profound change. And I've had to learn what are the most important things. And that has everything to do with my work. Because, most of my friends are retired. They got nothing to do. They're going high, they're taking a trip down south, or they're whatever that they're doing. I actually left. I retired from my job at the university 2.5 years ago and started 2 new companies. So my average day now is 12 hours, average day, 12-hour day. And most people my age, they don't want to do that. And I don't like doing it some days either. But I really like the direction that my company and my life is going. I just have so many positive things that are happening that I'm willing to sort of push it a little bit here for the next couple of years. But again, and part of the reason is that I'm all done complaining. Everything has to be positive. Working 12 hours a day is great if you're getting a lot of really cool things done. I'll leave you with this, Cheryl. I also told myself I'm not going to sacrifice time with friends or doing things. So today's Tuesday. Sunday afternoon, I was at a birthday party for a friend of mine. Yesterday, I had someone come to my office for a couple hours and we spent some time together. Should I have been working? Yeah, it's all right. I worked last night. So I do coffee. I have lunch with people. I always make time for those kind of things because it's so important. It cannot be just work all the time. It has to be. You've got to make time for those things. That's the most important. So that's how I'm going to say on that.
It sounds like you're creating a balanced, energized life between focusing on your own health, developing the next stage of your career, and making time for family and friends. Eric, this has been so insightful. Thank you for being here and for sharing your experience and expertise. You've given us a lot of helpful things to think about.
Thanks for having me on, Cheryl.
In closing, I want to thank you once again for allowing me to be part of your journey. I hope you'll give these practices a try and see what you discover. If you have a comment or a question about today's episode, just write to me at Cheryl@thrivingwithcheryljones.com. Join me next time when we'll explore how to increase your capacity for love and attract more love into your life. Thanks so much for listening. Be well and thrive on.
Thank you for tuning in to the Thrive 55 Plus podcast. Contact Cheryl with a burning question, access free mindfulness meditation resources, and schedule a free consultation to explore how you can achieve your goals and aspirations through personalized coaching sessions with Cheryl. Just visit her website, thrivingwithcheryljones.com. Subscribe to or follow the Thrive 55 Plus podcast. Leave a review or share it with a friend. Next time, be well and thrive on.